There are few things more satisfying than a good brothy soup on a cold day. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Out There JCH. I'm your host, Jonathan C. Hall. It's starting to get cold out. One of the things that I really like to have when the weather changes is a hearty bowl of soup with lots of veggies, some good carbohydrates, good fats, and good meats. When my wife and I started dating, she introduced me to a dish that I'd never had before. And so when my wife took me to a pho restaurant that was around the corner from where we lived, I was super excited. And after that first bite, I knew that I wanted to have this in my life on a regular basis. Pho is one of the most delicious and satisfying foods that I've ever had. And as time went on, and I tried different versions of pho from different places, I began to think, could this be something that I could make at home? So after finding a couple of recipes on YouTube, I decided that I wanted to try to make pho at home. Whenever eating foods of a particular culture, I think it's important to find teachers who have a strong connection and relationship with the people of the cuisine that you're eating. So, if this is your first introduction to pho, stop watching this video and watch this one so that you can get a better sense of what this dish is all about. Then come on back here and see how somebody like me tries to create a dish that so many people love. Let's see how I did. Any good soup starts with a good bone broth base, and pho is no exception. Finding good marrow bones is really important. What I think is a secret to really delicious broth is finding these knuckle bones that have lots of cartilage, which gives the soup a silky texture. The thing that makes bone broth so nutritious is the marrow, which you can find in these cross-section long bones that are filled with just incredible nutrition. Compared to other cuts of meat, marrow bones are mad cheap. You just have to ask for them. So, talk to your local butcher. In addition to roasting the bones, you're also going to want to roast your aromatics. Here I cut up a whole yellow onion and some ginger. The roasting adds a really wonderful flavor to the broth. One of the things that I hadn't seen that much in some of the recipes for pho was the inclusion of oxtails. Oxtails are a delicious food, and I hadn't really considered adding them to a broth to add flavor. But if you watch the episode that I recommended at the start of this episode, you'll see that the auntie whose recipe I'm following uses oxtails and considers them an essential ingredient for her pho. Roasted and ready to go. Rather than boil the bones down on the stove over a long period of time, I decided to put all of the bones and the oxtails in my Instant Pot and pressure cook them. The smell at this point was already incredible, but I'd be lying if I wasn't a little bit nervous that pressure cooking these bones would take away from some of the complexity of flavor that boiling them on the stove over a period of hours might accomplish. One hour later. So at this point, this was already one of the best broths that I'd ever made. I actually saved some of this and used it for a beef stew a couple of weeks later. Oxtails, go! So as I pull out this knuckle bone, you can see the cartilage that's beginning to dissolve and cook away from the bone. It's this connective tissue, when dissolved in the liquid, that gives a broth its delicious, silky texture. It's also the thing that makes bone broth such a healthy thing to consume. The collagen that's in this cartilage helps heal and support your gut health. So if you've ever wondered why when you put broth in the fridge it turns to jello, it's because it's full of this dissolved collagen. That's the good stuff. All right, so after the bones had some time on the stovetop for about an hour, I pulled the aromatics out of the stove and added them to the already simmering broth. Continuing to build the flavors, I added star anise, cinnamon, black cardamom, green cardamom, and a healthy amount of coriander seeds. I heated up this cast iron pan, lightly roasted these ingredients to bring out more of the flavors. Okay, so after a couple of hours of cooking, it was time to remove the bones and the oxtails. And at this point, it was time to add the fish sauce. Fish sauce is one of the greatest ingredients that humans have ever developed, and it is one of the essential ingredients to a lot of Asian and African cuisine. So at this point, things were really beginning to smell like the pho that I had at restaurants. And this is always a really exciting point in the cooking process for me. When you're able to replicate the smell and the look of something in your own kitchen, there's really no greater accomplishment. I did make one mistake though, and as you can see me fishing out the aromatics and the seasonings, I should have put the coriander, the cinnamon, the star anise, and the cardamom into a seasoning bag, so it would be a lot easier for me to remove all of those little bits instead of having to fish them out as they're floating around in the broth. One more thing, yes, I know my broth is not clear, and usually a pho broth is clear, but I was a little bit rushed and didn't take the steps necessary to make sure that my broth was clear. It still tasted good though. One of the last steps in this process is to prepare the fresh ingredients. I always like to have green onions, bean sprouts, cilantro, and lime. Jalapenos are nice to have too. My camera malfunctioned, so I didn't record adding the broth to the noodles and the raw meat, but you can see the bowl here, which has those last ingredients in it. What do you think? I'd give myself a C+ as a first attempt. It wasn't seasoned enough. I think I could have added more salt. The noodles I used, they were more like pad thai noodles, and I think that took away from the texture of the pho as we were eating it. And the dish didn't have any beef tendon, and I need to find a source of that for the next time I make this dish. So, all in all, not too bad for a first attempt. Definitely something that I plan on making again, especially now that the weather has turned cold. All right, that's all I have for this episode. I'll see you next time on